Tonight, let me tell you a story from the Slavic hearth, a quiet tale about a small guardian spirit who was never meant to frighten but always to reassure. Outside the windows of a village house, snow drifts slowly and the wind hums against the shutters. Inside, a kettle whispers on the stove and a grandmother moves carefully, setting a small saucer of milk near the warmest corner. She does not speak loudly, for the one she honors is shy and prefers a gentle gesture to a grand word. This is the Domovoi, the little helper of the household, a spirit who, people said, lived beside the fire, behind the stove, or even beneath the threshold. He was not large or glowing, but imagined as a small figure with a beard like the ash on logs, with eyes that twinkled kindly in the dark. In many stories, he was quick to straighten a boot by the door, hush a rattling shutter, or tuck a blanket tighter around a sleeping child. The house seemed to breathe easier when he was content, and that comfort carried families through long winters. The idea that a home itself could have a friend is older than written words. Imagine a time when winters were harder, and the walls of a wooden cottage felt thin against the storm. Families gathered close by the hearth, not only for warmth, but for company, and it was natural to believe that something more than fire lived there with them. In one telling, the Domovoi was thought to be the spirit of the very first ancestor of the family, choosing to remain close to protect his descendants. In another, he was said to be a gift from the earth itself, a reminder that no dwelling stands alone. People spoke of him with respect, but not with fear. He did not roar or command. Instead, he preferred courtesy. A saucer of milk, a piece of bread set aside, or even the simple act of tidying the kitchen at night. These were the small languages of gratitude that made him feel welcome. And when he felt welcome, the family felt safe. Grandmothers told children that if you treated the Domovoi kindly, the nights grew shorter, the shadows less restless. Cats would purr more deeply on the stove. Dogs would settle without barking at the wind, and even dreams would be softer. But if one was careless, if boots were left scattered, or if arguments were left unresolved, the Domovoi might show his discontent by knocking gently, or by tangling the horse's manes, or by hiding small objects until apologies were made. In this way, he was a teacher of order and peace, not through harsh punishment, but through reminders that kindness at home is the soil of harmony. Even the smallest rituals of tidying and offering were acts of cooperation with the unseen, a way of saying, "We are not alone, and our house is alive with care." Imagine again the winter night. Snow taps faintly at the window, but inside the stove glows red, and the wooden beams creak softly. The grandmother hums as she folds linen. She does not look directly to the corner, but she smiles toward it, as though to a neighbor. She remembers how years ago, her own mother poured a little milk and whispered a thank you for a safe return when the men came home from the forest. She remembers that once, when the roof leaked in spring, her father repaired it and left a piece of bread at the attic beam, so the Domovoi would know the work was done with respect. These gestures stitched time together, binding generations with quiet acts of gratitude. In that quiet rhythm, families found not only protection, but belonging. And here is something curious. While each village had its own way of speaking about the Domovoi, the pattern was almost always gentle. Some said he appeared like a tiny old man wrapped in fur. Others imagined only a warmth at the edge of sight, or a rustle like a mouse but with no harm. Folklorists who later collected these tales noticed how consistently the Domovoi was linked to the hearth, to animals, and to tidiness. He was never far from daily life, never demanding more than courtesy. The myth was practical as well as tender. By teaching children to leave things in order, to share with unseen guests, and to speak kindly, the story made the home itself feel like a partner. In this way, the line between belief and habit blurred, and what remained was a culture of attentiveness. As you listen now, perhaps you can imagine your own home breathing quietly around you. Every creak of wood, Every sigh of wind at the eaves becomes less a cause of worry and more a sign of life. The Domovoi in this story is not far away in some unreachable realm. He is here in the everyday, a symbol of the warmth we create when we care for one another. Tonight's tale is not about battles or storms, but about how peace is built one gesture at a time. Let the kettles whisper and the cat's purr fill the silence. Let the snow at the window remind you that inside there is warmth and company. The Domovoi is said to be shy, but he is always listening for kindness. And when he hears it, he gives it back, multiplied in the quiet ways that make a house a home. So the grandmother sets her saucer down, smooths her apron, and turns down the lamp. She trusts that the night will be gentle. She trusts that the house will keep its breath steady. And in that trust, she rests, knowing that small courtesies are never lost. The Domovoi watches, unseen but near, and the long winter feels shorter already. By the time midnight comes, the house has settled into stillness. The embers in the stove glow like a gentle heartbeat, casting a faint red light on the walls. A cat stretches on the warm stone and then curls again, purring in rhythm with the quiet breath of the room. Somewhere beyond the shutters, the wind sighs, but inside there is only calm. In many villages across Russia, Ukraine, and the lands of the Slavic North, families believed that this calm was not only the work of wood and stone, but also of their invisible guardian. They said the Domovoi was most active at night, moving softly from corner to corner, checking that doors were latched, that coals were banked, that children were covered. He was thought to be like a caretaker who never slept, who loved the household enough to keep vigil when humans grew tired. This image comforted people during long winters when nights seemed endless. Knowing that someone, or something, shared the duty of keeping watch made the dark less lonely. The stories often emphasized his modesty. Unlike great gods who demanded temples or heroes who sought glory, the Domovoi preferred corners. His power was not shown in lightning or thunder, but in the hush of a shutter, the mending of a squeaky hinge, or the sense that quarrels eased more quickly when people remembered to be kind. In one tale, a farmer who forgot to greet his Domovoi with milk found that his boots were always hidden, and his fire would not catch until he spoke an apology. In another, a young bride who entered a new home was told to bow politely toward the stove, for the spirit needed to be introduced to her, as if to say, "Here is a new member of the family. Please watch over her too." These rituals might seem small, but they gave structure to the unseen bond between people and their dwellings. A home was not just shelter, it was a partnership. Folklorists have wondered whether the Domovoi is a memory of ancestors or a personification of the hearth itself. Some note that in older traditions, the first fire lit in a house was considered sacred, and perhaps the Domovoi is the echo of that first flame. Others point to the practice of burying a token, a lock of hair, a coin, or even ashes, under the threshold when building a house. Such customs suggest that people longed to tie themselves, their families, and even their spirits to the places they lived. The Domovoi, then, may be the story form of that bond. He represents continuity, the idea that homes remember their caretakers and repay their care with protection. Whether ancestor, flame, or symbol, the Domovoi is always a reminder that kindness leaves traces. Children listening to these stories often asked, "What does he look like?" Some grandmothers would smile and say he looked like a tiny grandfather with a long beard, dressed in old clothes, his face lit by firelight. Others said you should never look directly, for the Domovoi disliked being seen. You could only sense him at the corner of your eye, a shadow that shifted kindly, a warmth in the air, or the faintest sound of someone moving when no one else was awake. Cats were thought to see him clearly, which is why they sometimes stared into empty corners with calm eyes. If a cat curled up by the stove and purred, it meant the Domovoi was content. If the cat hissed without reason, people believed the little spirit was unsettled. Such tales encouraged gentle observation of animals, a way of teaching children to notice signs of harmony or unrest in the household. There were also variations across regions. In some places, people left not milk, but bread, or a sprinkle of salt. In others, the Domovoi was said to follow the family if they moved, but only if he was invited. A ritual for moving involved taking embers from the old hearth to the new, carrying them carefully so that the spirit would travel with the fire. Without such care, it was feared that the family might arrive at their new home, feeling strangely empty, as though they had left behind an unseen friend. These details highlight how seriously people took the idea that kindness and ritual shaped safety. The Domovoi was not a tale for amusement alone. He was a framework for daily gratitude. Imagine again the grandmother we left earlier, her saucer of milk cooling on the stove ledge. She knows that while her eyes grow heavy, the spirit will wander. Perhaps he tucks the blanket more tightly around her grandson, who kicks his feet even in sleep. Perhaps he makes sure the latch on the barn door holds against the wind. Perhaps he strokes the fur of the old dog who dreams by the fire. None of these acts are grand, but each one whispers, "You are cared for." When morning comes, no one will have seen him, yet they will feel his presence in the order of things. The boots are lined neatly by the door, the shutters are still, and the air feels like it has been kindly watched. There is something profoundly reassuring in this idea. Even if we no longer set saucers of milk, we might recognize the truth behind the story, that homes do hold memory, and that kindness shapes atmosphere. Walk into a room where people speak gently, and you feel calm. Enter a place where anger lingers, and you feel unsettled. The Domovoi is a personification of this reality. He tells us that when we pour care into our homes, the walls themselves give it back. When we keep respect in our daily habits, the air grows easier to breathe. These insights turn myth into guidance, helping families navigate both practical chores and emotional bonds. As the night deepens, snow thickens on the roof. Yet the family inside sleeps soundly, trusting that their small courtesies, tidying the hearth, setting out a saucer, speaking kindly, have invited peace. The Domovoi does not need thanks in the morning. His reward is the sound of steady breathing, the glow of embers that never quite fade, and the certainty that his house remains whole. In this way, the myth closes gently, not with triumph or conquest, but with the image of a house as a living companion, shaped by kindness, protected by quiet vigilance. By the first pale light of dawn, the storm has softened. Snow lies in smooth curves on the roof, and the chimney breathes a faint ribbon of smoke into the sky. Inside, the last coals glow low, but the room is not cold. The grandmother rises quietly, her shawl wrapped tight, and she smiles when she sees the boots neatly placed, the shutters steady, and the saucer of milk empty. She does not rush to explain these small things. She knows that a house watched with care seems to take care of itself. She adds kindling to the stove, listens to the first hiss of flame, and whispers a thank you that is both prayer and habit. Around her, the family begins to stir, stretching and yawning, unaware of the quiet work that has guarded their rest. In their hearts, though, they feel it, the sense that the night has been kind. This is how the Domovoi lingers, not as a figure seen in full daylight, but as a mood, a comfort, a tradition carried forward. People once believed that by honoring him, they also honored the idea that homes deserve gratitude, and perhaps that is a truth that still matters. Even today, when our houses are warmed by central heat and guarded by locks and lights, there is something deeply human about speaking kindly to our dwellings, about tidying a corner with respect, or pausing to notice the peace of a quiet room. The myth tells us that our surroundings are alive with memory, and that they respond to how we treat them. The Domovoi is a story that teaches us to value courtesy not only with neighbors and kin, but also with the very walls that shelter us. Some versions of the tale even spoke of the Domovoi leaving gentle warnings. If quarrels grew too harsh, he might sigh audibly in the rafters. If someone forgot their duties, he might move an object so it could not be found until apologies were made. Yet these were never threats of harm, only reminders to restore balance. In this sense, the Domovoi was a teacher of harmony. He encouraged families to resolve tensions before sleep, to mend what was broken, to share what they had. When children asked why the house sometimes creaked at night, parents would say, "That is the Domovoi reminding us to be kind." Such answers turned fear into reassurance, shaping the sound of wood and wind into lessons of care. It is also said that when a family moved to a new house, they invited the Domovoi to come with them. They carried embers from the old stove, placed them in the new hearth, and whispered, "Here is your new home with us." If the move was done respectfully, the Domovoi would follow and bless the new dwelling. If not, the family might feel unsettled until they remembered to honor him. These rituals reflected an understanding that belonging is built, not bought, and that even new places need to be welcomed gently. The sky myth therefore carried a message about transitions. Every threshold crossed is safer when we acknowledge it with gratitude. As we return to our story, the grandmother pours fresh milk into a cup for the waking children. The cat stretches again and pads toward the window, where frost patterns glimmer like white ferns. The house feels alive, not because anyone saw a spirit in the night, but because the family has inherited the rhythm of care. They will carry it forward, perhaps without thinking, tidying their spaces, offering kindness, softening their words at the end of the day. In this way, the Domovoi continues to live, not as a figure in shadow, but as a practice of warmth. And what lesson rests here for us, listening tonight? Perhaps it is this: kindness at home multiplies in quiet ways. When we place respect in the small details, closing the door gently, offering gratitude for a meal, folding a blanket for another, the space around us changes. It becomes lighter, safer, more welcoming. The Slavic families who told stories of the Domovoi may have been teaching their children this very truth in the language of myth. They shaped an invisible caretaker so that children could understand the power of courtesy. And even for us, far from those snowy cottages, the wisdom remains clear. Peace begins in the way we tend our hearths, however modern they may be. So let the morning light fall softly now, carrying the assurance that the night was kind. The Domovoi, shy and unseen, has already done his work. The boots stand ready, the shutters are still, and the warmth of the hearth lingers like a promise. Beyond the windows, the world waits with its storms and labors, but within the home, calm is already woven. In this story, as in life, the unseen helper is kindness itself, moving quietly from corner to corner. Tonight, as you rest, think of your own room as a living friend. The hum of a heater, the rustle of curtains, the creak of a floorboard. Let them remind you not of emptiness, but of gentle company. Let the myth of the Domovoi teach you that no night is fully dark when respect and gratitude keep watch. The house breathes with you, the bed cradles you, and the quiet helper, whether spirit or habit, stays near. And so we end our tale with a lullaby of assurance. May your night be soft, your home steady, and your dreams kind. Thank you for listening to this bedtime story of the warm corner of the Domovoi. If you found peace in this gentle myth, remember to subscribe for more stories from the hearths and thresholds of the world. Until we meet again, good night. And may your home always breathe with warmth and belonging.